Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a really fascinating book by Michael Perlin called The Reunited States of America. It's his take on what's driving the deep divisions in the country today, and, more importantly, what he thinks we can do to heal them. Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the author's idea of America's original purpose. Then we'll get into his diagnosis of the problem, this authoritarian playbook, and what he says the real costs of all this division are. And finally, we'll look at his proposed solution, a plan for reunification and a return to what he calls a mystical destiny.
So first up, let's talk about the big picture. To really get what the author is saying, we have to start where he starts, with this idea that America was founded as this truly unique experiment, a project in unity and freedom unlike anything else.
And really, this one question is what drives the whole book. Perlin is basically asking, are we going to live up to the united in our name? He frames this as the single biggest challenge we're facing right now.
Now, this is where things get really interesting and maybe a little unexpected. Perlin argues that America was founded with this almost mystical destiny. He talks about esoteric thinkers, even figures like Saint Germain, and suggests there was a spiritual force guiding the nation's birth, aiming for something much bigger than just politics, a kind of enlightenment.
Okay, so if that was the grand vision, you have to ask, where did we go off track? Well, the author points to a very specific pattern, a kind of playbook for how democracies fall apart that he believes is playing out right now.
And for him, authoritarianism isn't some sudden military coup. No, he says it's way more subtle. It's the slow, creeping erosion from the inside, where leaders actually use the tools of democracy, like elections and the media, to tear it down piece by piece.
So here it is, what he calls the authoritarian playbook. And according to Perlin, it's a 5-step process that you see again and again throughout history. It starts by creating an enemy, then it moves to attacking institutions, controlling information, you get the idea. The point is, he argues this isn't random chaos, it's a strategy.
And this is where his argument gets really pointed. He draws these direct parallels between the fall of Germany's Weimar Republic and what he observed during the Trump era. He's not just talking in hypotheticals, he's pointing to specific things, like economic anger, scapegoating, and attacks on democratic norms, and saying, hey, we've seen this movie before.
So what's the actual damage here? What's the real cost of all this division? According to the author, it's not just about politics. It goes way deeper, affecting our society, our communities, and even our souls. To make his point, Perlin uses this staggering number, 40 million. He says that's how many Germans cheered for Hitler's rise to power, only to be left with unimaginable suffering. For him, it's a chilling historical reminder of where a path of division and hate can lead. And he argues these costs are like dominoes. You start with the political stuff, eroding civil liberties, losing trust in our institutions. That leads to societal breakdown, right? Families getting torn apart, communities turning on each other, and at the deepest level, he says there's a spiritual cost. We lose our empathy, that sense of shared humanity. Okay, so that's a pretty grim diagnosis. But the book doesn't just leave us there. After explaining the problem, Perlin offers up a solution, a detailed roadmap he calls Project Reunification.
And he explicitly sets up his plan as a direct counteroffer to Project 2025. He essentially presents them as two competing visions for America's future. Where he sees one as a plan to consolidate power and dismantle institutions, he frames his own project as a way to strengthen democracy and bring people together with compassion.
So what's in this blueprint? Well, it's built on these 5 main pillars. You've got some really concrete policy ideas in there, like term limits and campaign finance reform, but it also includes these broader goals, like promoting compassion, equality, and global peace, all of which, in his view, are essential to pushing back against the rise of fascism. All right, and for this last part, the author takes a step back from policy and politics. He argues that the deepest solution isn't a new law, but a kind of collective spiritual awakening to get back to America's original, higher purpose. And this is where we circle right back to that idea of a mystical destiny. He pulls in quotes from philosophers like Manly P. Hall, who saw America as something truly special, a nation destined to be a beacon of light and unity for the whole world. So when you boil it all down, the ultimate fix, according to this book, isn't political at all. It's a revolution of consciousness. It's about a mass shift in how we see each other, moving past dogma and division to finally recognize our shared universal humanity. And that brings us to the final question the author leaves hanging in the air. It's a big one, right? Can a country really heal its deepest political wounds with a spiritual solution? The book suggests that maybe, just maybe, It's the only way forward. It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about.